So next 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I want to finish going through the state of the AI report. We did that last week, and we can kind of do it the same way. I'll just go through a couple of the slides here. Last week, we went up through slide 110, which was really talking about how the models were getting cheaper. And again, I'd like to keep it as interactive as possible, not just me talking to it. So if you got a contribution or a comment or a disagreement, please raise your hand here, and we'll finish off going through the highlights of the report here. So we talked a lot about last week. Prices continue to fall. Chat agents as interactive sidekicks. We've seen a lot of this, being able to get a side panel to really help more integrated thinking. Designing new products. We have one of the folks we've been working with is at Crocs, the company that makes the plastic shoes and stuff, and they've really been asking us, and we've been really helping a lot on how generative AI and other tools are really transforming the ad business. So both on more video ads, reducing the time, obviously, and creating content, creating lots of different contexts, and having humans find it. It's really been transformative on that front. We've seen a number of European companies struggle. Alpha, which I think raised $400 or $500 million. They were a foundation company. They pivoted to application companies here. We had another company that raised, I think, $400 million in a seed round, and they blew apart. So it really continues to be some struggles over there, although we do, in general, hear pretty good things about Mistral. I know they're still working on their getting more distribution out, but continue to hear good things about those folks. IBM has spent a lot of time on their own proprietary model called Granite. And one of the execs there told me, this is public, that one of the reasons they're doing it is because they want to have a foundational model that has less liability risk as they put in Gen AI into their own products. And we've seen both Databricks and Snowflake's come out with their own one. Certainly Databricks leveraging the Mosaic acquisition from a year or so ago. Comments or the Aqua hires, we've seen 3 or 4 of those. So Microsoft hired a bunch of people from Inflection. Amazon hired a bunch of people from Adept. Google hired a bunch of people from Character AI. So we continue to see lots and lots of fight for talent. Raymond, you mentioned doing Cursive, which I think is from AnySphere. Is that correct? Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of basically you ingest everything from VS Code, and you can use the same plugins, but it has the AI component, and has a code component and a compose component. And I find it really helpful because as I work on different projects, it speeds development time. But then in what I'm finding in Reddit and some of the groups, developers are talking, and there's a whole discussion going on how we're seeing this like rise now in the well, actually I wouldn't call it a rise, a decline in a rise in the decline of code quality, because there's a group of people who are letting the AI write the code and not understanding what it is that it's writing. And so now you have senior developers that have to go back and go through this code. So there's some issues that are happening, but Cursor, the tool itself, is awesome. You just have to know, you have to know how to use.
And Raymond, share from your cockpit where you were 2 years ago on these tools, and where do you think you'll be 2 years from now?
Well, 2 years ago, I wasn't, I was still learning Python. 2 years ago, I didn't, I was late. I'm a front end full stack developer. So the whole AI thing, I started December 22. right after ChatGPT. And so now I'm finding it hard. If it wasn't for my Notion that I've kept since then, I would have lost a lot of the knowledge that I came across. But I'm also seeing a lot of knowledge that decays, right? I mean, all these YouTube videos and stuff. How do you do this and how do you do RAG or whatever? There's a new RAG video every other day, and a lot of the tools are starting to decay as new ones are coming out that are much simpler, much faster. So I think some developers question the advantage of staying on top of the technology and trying to stay at the forefront, because they say, like, at some point, there's so many apps now that can do so much. But I think it's important. I'm kind of drifted into tools because I have clients and I have things that I need to do and I need to do efficiently. And so now I'm learning more about the tools. Before it was, I had to take a whole weekend just on image stuff because I was like, at the beginning, I was like, ooh, like Dolly, but now it's like Dolly 3, now I'm like,
Yeah.
so then I'm going through all these image things and doing video now and stuff, and that's the weekend. Then it's like back to the model stuff, so it's yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Yeah. Yeah. Tim, you have a hand up?
I did. Back about the Google and Gemini stuff in
Oh,
particular. Um, the interesting question is, are they making any progress? So this says, they've made these great models, and I haven't been that impressed. And so, but I'm not, I'm anecdotal. So I'm wondering if, we've been saying for a while, and I've heard it said by many people, it's still a small group. Google's not really making much headway against OpenAI or Anthropic, really, for that matter. And so the question is, are they really, is that true, or are they really beginning to make some headway? Because they certainly have a premier position.
who else has got opinion on that? Yeah, Google, Gemini and stuff. Are they actually, I mean, we're sitting here almost at the end of '04. Sheesh or Alden?
Ashish can go first. He had his hand up.
I don't have an opinion on the Google stuff, but couple of things someone mentioned earlier around using AI as code generator.
So,
I-
Sheesh, hold on till let's finish Tim's question. We'll come back to
Okay,
you.
yeah. Yep.
Alden, is this on the Gemini or?
Yeah. So, to be honest, till now, I haven't seen a single product from Google that sort of like blowed my mind. Not a single one. It's almost like they are 3 months behind everybody else, and then they come along and catch up to something that OpenAI and Anthropic did 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, somebody mentioned Notebook LM. That's a cool little, yeah, that was a little impressive, but not foundationally impressive. Like, I don't think anything from Google, including Notebook LM, like changes any industry or anybody's major source of living.
Alden, I know mine on my browser, I've got 5 or 6 of the robots up front, and probably once a week I'll take a prompt I use in OpenAI and put it in, Copilot and Gemini, and I continue to be equally underwhelmed at Gemini. I think there's a way to eventually get it to use my past Google emails and stuff, although I don't really have enough use for that. But has anyone been impressed with Gemini? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
listen.
I like it for looking at recent things. Like if I've got something very recent that I need to look at, I like to use it in conjunction with both the AI and the search. So I find it's really the most up to date reliably. I think that's the major time I use it.
Do you also use Perplexity? We do a lot of researches like
Yeah,
that.
I use Perplexity. I don't know how often Perplexity gets updated. Yeah, I mean, I bounce around between Claude, Perplexity, OpenAI, and Google. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, good. Ben, is this on Gemini or we'll wait? Ben, you're on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Apologies. So I've been using it quite a bit when I got my new Pixel phone, because they kind of built it in similar to, I think, how Apple's done it. I'm not sure, but so I was trying to pressure test the voice mode, and I thought it was at least better at doing longer sessions than when I use ChatGPT's voice mode. I also got like their latest version recently, but OpenAI's version seems to limit you in the amount that you can use it for. So I think Gemini, because of that fact alone, it made it actually useful for me to use the Gemini version. I'm curious how many other people are actually using the voice mode and how that's maybe different in their own experience too with AI.
Voice mode in the Gemini one in particular, or OpenAI and Gemini, Ben?
I think both. They're both similar, and they're using like that live kit, I think, functionality. As we were speaking about real-time AI, I'm curious how people are actually using that in this group.
I use the OpenAI voice almost every time I drive. I give it another question and really find it transformative of my drive experience. But all right, well, if we do, we can come back to that, Ben. Good to see you again. Sheesh, you were talking about coding. Let's get the Sheesh bash in here.
Yeah, so there was comment around quality of code degrading because a lot of maybe junior engineers are using AI to write the code. I feel we're in this initial part of the curve where models are starting to write code that people are actually kind of leveraging in real work. But this soon will get accelerated. Some of the latest work that, for example, Anthropic has done on Sonnet model, it's much better at writing code and ability for agents to write test cases for code that might have been generated by AI. So AI writing test cases or cross-checking the code that AI might have written. Some of that would accelerate very fast, I feel.
Yeah.
In the next 6 months.
That's great. Sheesh and Alden, one thing to tell you about this here, all this is recorded, so we can go from a year from now and come back and pull this up and kind of see what we talk about coding October 28th. It really is breathtaking how fast this is going on. Let me plow forward a little bit here, but let's keep raising our hand here. MI tools for specialist tool. Agents are coming. We're certainly seeing lots of discussion on that. I think jury may be out in terms of how quickly these actually get adopted, but certainly a breathtakingly expansive set of definitions. Raymond, you mentioned earlier you're doing a lot with agents. Are you bullish on agents actually moving in production, or are we still in the experimental mode?
Yeah, I'm seeing automation, right? I'm seeing a lot of automation. I'm not seeing a lot of power being given to the agents in production. I do know that some of that is happening, but I'm as hopeful as I am, there's still some issues. So I am still bullish on agents, though. Yeah.
Who else has got comments on agents? I guess at one level, the OpenAI 01 is a set of agents underneath that's doing multiple processing. But Alden, what's your view, Alden?
Yeah, it's certainly going to do a lot of workflow and process type things. So I'm very bullish about that. I built a couple of agents, and it's not going to be as simple as like, click and drop, but it's going to really improve a lot of processes.
And so much of what I've seen out there, Alden, see if this you agree with, or Lucinda, a lot of it is on that double checking refinement of an output, not a text action. It's not going in getting me a new airline ticket. It's double checking that what I put in matches the date or something internally. Is that fair characterization?
Correct. Like a flow, a workflow. If you want an example, I've been working for 3 years now on this one agent that is supposed to go out and do a PhD in 30 minutes. So it goes out, does like 30 minutes of research. It uses OpenAI's O1 model for some stuff. It goes, searches Google for like 15 minutes. It packages everything together and then gives you a PhD for like
You haven't
$95.
got that done in 3 years?
I know, I'm still like not. I think I need to release this at some point, but that's a sort of an example, like, you know, a PhD for $95.
Yeah, yeah, great. Go ahead, Lucinda. What's your experience with agents?
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of people are going to be using them, as people mentioned before, as small automations. That's kind of the cautious way to do it, like just do it with small automations. And then I do feel like there's a whole bunch of kind of checking and debugging and other types of infrastructure that needs to be built. Like LangChain is building some of that with their Langsmith, and Llama Index is doing some of that, and some people are doing it through the DSPy framework. So these things they're all really immature. I think that there's a lot of kind of upside for it. I don't know that we found like the best use case, but I've seen things where you have like a researcher and an editor and a writer, and you just get it to go through that. The best practices for like you'd let it go for 3 cycles or 10 cycles or whatever. And then also, how do you incorporate the reasoning that's now getting embedded into the large language models that are going to obviate the need for certain steps in the agent? It's still really, we're still in, what's that thing where like you had the coacervates, the primordial brew? I think we're still a little bit there. You can't even see what the chunks are really.
And Lucinda and Raymond, would you agree with I mean, to me, at the end of the day, these are still, we're automating things. These are subroutine. I mean, this is still software. We still need requirements. We still need to test this. We still need to understand the boundary and the risk. I mean, agents show up and all the work goes away. I don't see that.
The more I do this stuff, the less magic I see, and the more complexity and ways for things to go off, and more like expertise is required.
Yeah.
That may not end up that way, but I don't know. Like the deeper I dig into this stuff, the more work and the more expertise it takes.
Yeah. Tim, go ahead, Tim.
So I think beyond the definition problem, like what the hell is an agent? But let's assume we get beyond that, because people will call whatever they want to market their product. But let's assume that an agent has some interesting capability to do things for you without much supervision, something broad like that. The challenge that we have, I think, and this is going to take a while, I think, to solve. We'll see. Maybe there'll be some breakthroughs from just actions, but the software industry is not this where software engineering is an oxymoron. Okay, so engineers have built reliable systems from unreliable parts for hundreds of years, maybe thousands, I guess. But it's taken hundreds of thousands of years for them to figure out architectures, processes, ways to do that. We call them tolerances, but they're physical tolerances for the most part. So every strut in a building isn't perfect, but we know the tolerances that will allow the building to survive an earthquake, or to stand up and not fall over, a bridge to not collapse, or whatever. And so we can, airplanes to keep flying. So we can build these systems, even though each part is unreliable in and of itself, or it has some tolerance. They're not, unreliable is a bad word. That's the engineering technical term, but it's not perfect. It's a statistical property of the device. Rivets break, struts have weaknesses at points in them, but they hold together if the system overall can tolerate those probabilistic scenarios. We have nothing like that in software, absolutely nothing. And that is going to really be critical if we want to drive over a bridge, trust these systems. Then we have to believe that somebody has figured out how to put these unreliable parts together into a reliable system. So I think that is a big thing to overcome right now. And it could take a few months because somebody just stumbles onto it or does something miraculous, or it could take many years. But I think that's the critical thing that people aren't paying attention to, is how do we create reliable systems from unreliable parts? There's lots of organizations that do that. Medical organizations do that as well in another way. But anyway, I think that's the big impediment for agents.
So I'm going to put in my calendar, October 28th, 2025, the revisit where we agents are, so we can, as a reminder to come back in here. And I'm wondering, Tim, as you talk, maybe we'll actually laugh at all the enthusiasm we had here for all the reasons that you and Lucinda have been bringing up here. I mean, really, moving from the idea and the R&D lab to the production is a big step here.
It is. The other thing, by the way, that you have to remember is that most people can't spell OpenAI, much less Perplexity, much less Anthropic, much less Cursor, okay? And so for them, success is simpler. And they're just not going to get, you know, it's hard to sell. I mean, I was, I'll give you an example. I was a progenitor of object-oriented databases in the late 80s, okay, which we now call NoSQL databases, right? And they're very popular now, but we couldn't get a word in edgewise because at that point, Oracle was still brand new. People were barely able to understand relational databases, much less these, you know, more complex databases. And we got annihilated because of it. It wasn't that it was a bad idea, it was just 20 years too early. And so again, I feel like with agents, that's going to be a challenge because, you know, if people can just do simple automation and get a long ways and get a quick return, that's what they're going to do. And it's going to take them a while just to figure out how to do that part.
Right. Good. Well, let's spend just a few more minutes. I want to jump all the way to predictions. I think they're way in the back here. And we'll get our, it's kind of like a time capsule, Lucinda, here that we're doing. Collective time capsule on their prediction. Where is it? Here we go. So the next 10 months, predictions, a $10 billion investment from a sovereign state into U.S. lab will get national review. That's interesting. People didn't see it. One of the things that we reviewed today in the news was that the country of Denmark doing a deal with NVIDIA and others to get their own sovereign, own your own intelligence at the country level. An app or web created solely by someone with no coding ability to go viral. Someone told me about an AI app that has a crypto coin that's $10 million in value. Does anyone know that?
Yeah, I briefly saw that, but did not delve. Yeah. It's too scary.
Go ahead, Alexander.
Yeah, I think that you're talking about the coin that Mark Andreessen kind of put out, the bot, and I think that he had it like create a crypto coin, and then it's now like doing very well, which is very interesting and also pretty scary as well. So that's a whole thing. Yeah,
and that's a whole one. You know, who owns it, and you know, do you pay taxes on it or what?
Yeah, exactly.
Frontier Labs, I think that's Foundation Models is equivalent, I believe, in their meaningful changes the data collection process after the cases begin reaching court. We've heard estimates of 20 billion plus in lawsuits against OpenAI for sucking up all the internet training data and others as well. An open source alternative surpasses O1. Boy, that's a big statement. How's our quote open source, open license feelings on that? People agree with that?
I think we're almost there, aren't we? I mean, what does exceed mean? If it exceeds it by like 1/10 of 1%, I mean, I think some of these models are pretty close already. And I'm sure they're all going to go back and put these longer chain of thought and more inference time. I don't think what OpenAI did, maybe it's more magic than we think, but it doesn't look that magical to me. So yeah, I'd be shocked if they was. Now, of course, what they aren't telling you is there could be an OpenAI 02 or 03 or 04 by then. So they aren't standing still either.
Certainly lots of rumors on that. No one in sight to even come close to the 3 trillion juggernaut of NVIDIA.
That's a cheap shot and an easy one. I mean, come on, how could you possibly, right? Even if AMD was unbelievably successful for the next 5 years, they wouldn't be close to that size. Yeah. So I think it's all relative, right? That's like saying OpenAI can be, comparable to Microsoft.
They have like 15 years of moat, you know?
Well, I'm
that.
not so sure. I think they have a
No?
long time. Again, I will repeat, as I've said, and we can look at this a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. Shortages almost always lead to gluts, but it can take a long, long time. So eventually, if there's a glut, NVIDIA is going to be in more trouble because they have more supply. But we're not close to that yet. And
Well,
it's
actually,
unclear.
Grok, Grok has a fundamentally different way of doing things, but they are only a chip company. They don't have all that ecosystem that NVIDIA does. But yeah,
Right.
so
Right.
that may be enough to,
We'll see. It's
to
a
get an edge.
complicated scenario. And you have choke points all over the place with ASML and Taiwan Semi. They're just all these choke points. So it's a complicated system.
Go ahead, Alexander.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off the NVIDIA comment, I think it's also interesting to see how fast that Elon Musk was able to actually build his new cluster. And if anybody knows what the specifics behind that were, because apparently he built it, it only took him like a fraction of the time. I think it usually takes him like 3 years, and it took him like a couple of months. So if anybody knows the kind of in the technicals behind that, I'd be happy to hear. But it really kind of goes into how the market's being built and how it's kind of mainly relying on NVIDIA. It's going to be that way for a long time.
Alexander, do you believe it's actually running? Do you believe his claim that it's up and running as fast as he said he did?
I don't know. I mean, it could be just fanfare from Jensen Huang and just kind of building up on that. But I do think that he's probably way ahead of the game as far as everybody. I mean, he was one of the, one of the founding members of OpenAI. So I think that, he's probably way ahead of the game we probably think that he is,
I don't know. I think first of all, I would take Paul's comment seriously. It's hard to trust anything he says. He's been promising self-driving cars for 10 years.
That's fair.
So you have to be really careful to take it with a grain of salt. Now, he has produced models in a hurry, but this is the joy of being a fast follower. I don't think it's got anything to do with his having founded OpenAI. I think it just has to do with the fact that there's a bunch of foundation models out there, and it's a lot easier once other people have sort of graded the roads for you, and you're just driving your car across instead of building the roads. So he has a big advantage in just coming late to the party, and he has a lot of money. And so, those two things can be effective.
One of the things I've been looking for is I'm looking for a chart of when these Tesla price is going down and when he has big announcements. It feels like he does a stellar job of showing shiny objects to Wall Street when he needs to. But
yeah, that's a whole nother story.
That's right.
Yeah. Look, he's built Grok. It's a decent, apparently, foundation model from what you can see of it. It's clearly, tuned very differently to support his idea of what a platform should be. So it's weird in that sense. But on the other hand, look what OpenAI gave you. It's obsequious to the extreme, right? If you ask it anything about yourself, I'm sure it's going to tell you have the best head of hair I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah. What's my worst quality? You see if it'll even. And last one, let's discuss this team to open up is strong results from Apple's on-device. I know they had some announcements today. They're slowly rolling out Apple Intelligence. Folks bullish on that, or are they going to be like Google? There's still a lot of fanfare a year from now.
I am from Missouri on this one. Apple eventually generally does okay. No offense to Ashish, but similar to Microsoft in that way. They move slowly. Sometimes they move a little quickly, but Apple is very slow mover. They're generally a fast follower at best and very cautious. And if you look at Siri, it's never been great. If I look at their voice dictation, word selection, it's years behind others. So we'll see. Maybe it'll be great.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ashish.
Yeah, Tim, I agree. But one of the things I feel what Apple has that nobody else is the deployment mode that they have. that even though they might be the latest on the AI bandwagon, but when they will do something, it will be in the hands of everybody, folks who don't even know what AI is. And that is going to be the differentiating factor, I feel, for them.
Yeah,
Because that just that
absolutely.
mode kind of gives them so much of leverage, I feel.
Yeah, I think that's why they can move slowly and still make a lot of money. And that's what they're doing, and that's what they tend to do. So we'll see. It has to work though, and it has to really be useful. And
Yeah.
they usually get there. As I said, I mean, I use their dictation all the time, even though it drives me nuts because it picks the wrong word probably 5% or more of the time when it's incredibly obvious what the right word should be. And so I find that crazy that they can't make it better than that. But on the other hand, they don't care. They have, 5 billion phones or whatever it is. So I'm an outlier.